Greetings, this is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Today's focus is Nikola Mucho Denaro, but no buyers. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. As you can see, I have this, my mic, I have my hat, and it is my wind baffle. So I thank you for taking time out to mention wind noise is always a problem. So I wanted to do a talk today on the fact that Nikola just arrived with earnings, and we are making an attempt right now to avoid the echo you hear behind me. So what's going on right now is that Nikola came out with earnings, and we wanted to review the general data points about what came up. And then from there, we wanted to review our analysis of what's going on. So as you know, Nikola has no revenue, no sales to speak of. Obviously, they do have expenses related to employee expenses, etc. And in general, that's the major story. What we wanted to sort of focus on is a couple of data points that came up that are illustrative of some of the things that are going on for them. The first thing we wanted to review is the Badger pickup truck. So why we think it's kind of interesting with the Badger is that it was revealed by the CEO, Mr. Russell, of Nikola, that the Badger idea sort of really caught fire in November of last year when the Cybertruck was introduced by Tesla. Now, I guess it's good that they recognized there was a marketplace for electric vehicles post Tesla's activities, and therefore decided to build this vehicle. So kudos for them. Another great example of good marketing on their part, which is to chase markets that seem to be large, growing, and worth their time to pursue. There's an interesting data point that's moved out on the Badger, which is that Mr. Milton has claimed 1,000 or more vehicles, or there's been discussions of it being sold out for the pre-sales. It was indicated that they had deposits that ranged from $2,500 to $5,000 per vehicle. For our Badger show, we estimated that the sales were about 250 units. So it's kind of an interesting situation, because in a world in the auto industry, like right now, General Motors is planning 2 to 3 to 4 years out for what their lines are going to look like, and every detail about how products and the supply chain is going to work for that period. In the case of Nikola, they're planning on theoretically building a truck next year, but they haven't figured out who's going to build it yet. So usually it's kind of hard to get everything to come together nicely without excellent planning and time to do it. So we're a little bit intrigued by the fact that they're going to announce a partner theoretically before December and then be ready to go to production. Our assessment of this is that there's a tipping point number where it makes sense to build and run a production line, and I believe that number is at least 5,000 vehicles. It might actually be 10,000. We have a lot of smart viewers here, and I'll look forward to your comments on this, but it's our belief that there was minimal, if any, sales of the Badger. Something like 250 vehicles is what we estimated, because you could simply pay that number of people with money made from the stock going public to actually buy the car. And so for them to offer zero numbers, you have to assume then that it's possible that the Badger reservations were zero. As we've shared in the past, it's a very strange circumstance with the Badger, because the process that Nikola has used to get to its current market cap is actually a process in which they build prototypes, and then those prototypes drive customer sales. The semi-prototypes that they did or drive customer interest, drive willingness of people in the stock market to actually go ahead and buy the stock. In this case, they chose to instead present a picture they talked about offering their design for a truck to Tesla, given that the truck kind of looks like a doorstop, and they thought a more traditional vehicle would attract more sales. So we're at Miami Airport, obviously. So they were of the mind that more traditional vehicles would garner a lot more sales. So it's an interesting move by them to do the pickup and to do it without a prototype. We find very strange because that's a lot simpler than building a semi, at least something you could look at even if it didn't move. Another sort of data point that pops up from the announcement is the fact that there's a discussion by Mr. Milton of the fact that they have 5 prototypes coming off the line with Iveco in the near term, i.e. the next month or so, and they won't go to production fully for another 2 years on their hydrogen vehicle. So this is a very interesting point, and it has a couple of legs. The first is that it turns out that they're actually delivering their first electric semi first in 2021. When asked whether or not they actually had any customers for it, they said they don't have any. And so we thought this was interesting because, again, you kind of need revenue after a while in order to generate, sales and generate market cap, etc. And without that, I think things could be very difficult. The question is, why don't they have any customers? And the answer is that even Mercedes and all the others are in a stuck position. If they don't have the software capabilities and the battery combination with that Tesla has, everybody is stuck in the same position until one of the large Korean manufacturers gets a breakthrough, or Chinese manufacturers, that allows them to offer superior range to go with their EVs. So we await to see what's going to happen there. But basically what this is saying is that Nikola doesn't have any revenue now, and because of the demand that was articulated for the electric vehicles, it's likely they won't have any revenue next year either. We're finding this very strange because we're still asking the same question. If in this case, if the vehicle is ready to go and you're going to produce 5 of them in a manufacturing space in Ulm, Germany, why not just produce 100 of them and start handing them out to customers as revenue rather than stay in the prototype stage if things are ready to go? I guess the suggestion there is it's still a prototype. They aren't ready to go, and so therefore they have to wait for the 2 years before building. The 2-year wait seems strange because given that Hyundai is already selling their vehicles live, and Mercedes and Volvo have gotten together and likely start selling their vehicles live next year, there's just a lot of customer demand that's going to be consumed by very large competitors before they ever get to market. So we're very surprised that they want to go this route. The final major piece of announcement that came up was what's going on with the hydrogen stations. So the nucleus of the company currently is the fact that Nikola has a special technique where if they can get large throughput of use of hydrogen in trucks, so basically high usage would allow them to get to an economies of scale on hydrogen that would allow them to compete with diesel prices but be zero emissions. That's sort of the nucleus of the company right now. And it was revealed during the analyst meeting that they currently don't have a partner to build the hydrogen stations that are supposed to be superior. So this kind of might answer the question as to why Nikola does not have the trucks coming off, because they actually don't have the hydrogen facilities that meet the performance parameters that they articulated to begin with. So this is kind of an interesting circumstance. We're surprised to hear they actually introduced a partner to build these facilities when they announced 3 years ago the initial truck. So it's very strange to have that partner abandon ship, and Nikola's moving forward with a general concept, and they don't have a build partner for those facilities. This is a really important point, because what Mr. Milton pointed out is, without the infrastructure for high throughput of hydrogen, their unit costs go extremely high, and the potential to lose large amounts of money is huge. So, a few things to think about. Perhaps a sidebar note at the end here is that it was shared by one of our engineering friends that the combination of electric and hydrogen for for the Badger pickup trucks is somewhat of a good idea, because what people have been doing hybrid-wise is gasoline and electric. That way you don't have range anxiety, because you could just get gasoline to make up if you didn't have a chance to charge up. So this is an interesting situation, because they've chosen the combination of hydrogen and electric, and that combination helps address range anxiety, because there are very few hydrogen stations that are spread out, and so people can go back to electric. But electric, if it's not high speed like Tesla, would take a really long time to charge up. So we could really see why there'd be reluctance here. The exception that was noted to us is the fact that there are a lot of utilities or telephone companies, etc., that are heavily regulated, and their vehicles wouldn't necessarily work in a traditional environment well for customers to cause them to switch off of their current solutions. But it may work well for fleets that are somewhat different. So I wanted to review with you so perhaps the final note that I wanted to review here today is just the fact that there's a problem emerging, which is, we noticed that Mr. Milton was missing from the announcements. And why this is a problem is that there's something called SEC liability rules. So Mr. Milton has mentioned a lot of data points in non-public environments where he couldn't be asked hard questions by analysts. And he presented the CEO to respond to questions just now. And so I wanted to note this, because there's an interesting challenge here, which is, if you represent certain things in certain forums to the public and you're a public company, there could be a lot of problems, because you can go to jail for making statements that the company can't back up. So I think it makes sense for him not to be there, but it suggests that a lot of the core logic and plan that they have kind of really doesn't work, and so therefore it's unwise for him to show up. So in general, we'd say that, as we can see, there's a challenge. Nikola has $14 billion of market cap. They have a lot of business plan ideas about what they'd like to do, and they've presented general logic that seems fairly sound. The challenge is that there's a lot of obstacles to get from a general plan to an operating company that actually works. For our health section of today, now that we've finished up with our primary show, I just finished a dentist visit yesterday, and it was suggested that you brush after each meal briefly, or swish and swallow, because it takes as little as 12 hours for cavities to develop. And I usually brush before, and I think that's going to change my behavior a little bit. A recommendation to consider. Also wanted to encourage you to do 25 leg lifts a day to strengthen the quad muscles. Also wanted to encourage you to do a 30 SPF or better if you're going to be out in the sun. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss German, au revoir French, lahitro, Hebrew, choda hafez. Hey do, Swedish, Strasvich, Russian, ni hao ma, Chinese. And we're on the Blue Lagoon in Miami, Florida, near the airport. And we are grateful for your taking time out to view. and thanks for viewing us in our series on Nikola. Again, this is the Hilton Blue Lagoon. We're kind of in the area overlooking the pool here. Very nice facility. As with much of Miami, it's kind of a shutdown situation, but it's still beautiful nonetheless, and I could see it being awesome. There's actually an elevated tennis court here that I saw that I think would be kind of fun to try out when things are working properly as well. Have a great day. Bye for now. We look forward to your comments. Thanks.